would say it was about, and this would be different for everybody, but I'd say about 8 months. 8 months after retirement was when all of the, all the vacation stuff, all of the golf lessons and everything, and finally I stopped moving so fast, and I got to sit down, sit with it, and then say, well, what's happening? And then this was when everyone was like, what are you doing now? What's happened? And I was getting the praise, but at the same time, uh, the world was going on without me. And, I was just, I felt I used to be somebody. I used to be important, and instead of, then I'm just walking around the store trying to see if something's on sale today. And now I'm just some regular guy. But, I used to, well, at least I felt like I had, I carried some weight, and I was, since, my job title, I was this. Right. But now when people, hey, what are you doing? I'm retired, and then that's it. And then people just move on.
You're listening to The Uncertainty Edge, the show about the art and science of moving forward when the path isn't clear. I'm your host, Sam Sivarajan. Each episode, I sit down with leaders, advisors, and thinkers to explore how they navigate uncertainty, make better decisions, and stay focused in a world that rarely cooperates. Together, we'll look for the clarity hidden inside uncertainty. Hi, everyone. I'm Sam Sivarajan. I help decision makers navigate uncertainty with clarity and confidence. Whether you're guiding clients through complex transitions, leading teams through disruption, or facing your own pivotal moments, this show gives you frameworks and insights from leaders who've mastered high-stakes decisions. Today, I'm joined by Nick Shelton, author of An Introvert's Guide to World Domination and a thought leader on navigating life's most challenging transitions. Nick's journey from the Air Force to the oil and gas industry and ultimately to early retirement at 49 gave him firsthand experience with what he calls the identity crisis that comes when achievement stops defining who we are. His 6-phase framework helps people rebuild their sense of purpose, whether they're facing retirement, career disruption, divorce, or any moment when life demands we reimagine ourselves. Nick's insights offer a powerful roadmap for helping clients and yourself move from feeling unmoored to rediscovering meaning. Get ready for a conversation about purpose, reinvention, and the courage to build your next chapter. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
I think it's a very timely conversation that we're having. I feel this is a topic that many of our listeners can resonate with. Nick, you've had quite the journey. As I said in the intro, you went from Air Force to petroleum chemistry to retiring at 49.
Yes.
Can you share how these experiences have shaped your understanding of identity and perhaps what might have sparked your realization that retirement wasn't just about having the financials in place?
Right. Well, if we go back to the military part, the Air Force, a lot of times the good thing about that is exactly how you fit into that structure. They will let you know this is your spot, your job, exactly where you're at and what's expected of you, and it's a beautiful thing. But then when you get out of that and you're used to having that structure, then it's kind of like you're in the wind again. And so for me, I felt that being unmoored, that feeling of loss of structure once I got out of there. But then when I went to oil and gas, once again, I was plugged in. It wasn't as strict and set up the same way as the military, but it gave me my purpose for the time. So my identity was wrapped up in the military. My identity was wrapped up in my job, my achievements, and how well I did my job. And then the same when I got into the oil and gas, it said, okay, this is who I am now and how well I do it. And so I built my life around that. That was like my North Star, my mission for the military and then for the oil and gas. And then when I left that to the, I won, right? And retired. But then all of a sudden, if you spend all of this time and all these years with your identity wrapped up in something, and then all of a sudden it's not there, then it really leaves you lost and looking for that purpose. And that it's the same with divorce also. When you go through a divorce and you're used to being with this person or your family in a certain way, and then suddenly it shifts, because I've been through a divorce as well, and it shifts, then all of a sudden your identity was I'm this person, and now it's completely different. It shakes up the box, so to speak.
I think it's interesting. We'll come on to this, the achievement element of it, which I think is fascinating in and of itself. But what you said about structure resonates deeply with me. I think we're all products of structure. And I can tell you personally, I used to hate the idea of structure, or the fact that structure was important. I would deny it. And I've come to realize that, yes, I like my vacation. I like to go for that week or 2 weeks to get something different from the day to day. But I realized afterwards that I miss the structure. I miss knowing that this is what you're supposed to do when. And I suspect that most of our listeners, if they're listening to this, that they can nod their heads along, because I think we underestimate the importance of structure in our lives. And I've seen research, for example, that prisoners, right, people that have gone to jail, that one of the biggest challenges that they get when they come out is the idea of structure, right? They had a very, I'm not suggesting that the military was like a prison, but I mean,
Right.
it's very, very structured life in prison, right? You get up at this time, you go to eat at this time, you go out and exercise at this time. And having spent a significant portion of your life, you unfortunately are incarcerated, you come out, you will need something to replace that structure that you had grown used to, right?
Right. And I think that a lot of your listeners, I know that are in the financial advisement space, so they're focused on the financial part. But even with that financial part there, for some reason, we're all taught that if that is in place, then everything else just falls into place. But it is very important to, in addition to that, sure, you need your finances in place, but then you also need that some kind of structure to, and I was the same way where if you would have asked me when I was younger about structure, I'd be, no, I just want to be free.
Correct.
And yes, freedom can also be in a structure because, yeah, it's,
No, I totally agree. I think people
yes,
forget freedom isn't absence of structure. Freedom is around structure, because
yes,
the things that you've got structured allows you to not think about those things and be free to do other things. And the analogy I always use is, if you think about professional sports teams, they practice, 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 practice. And so there is structure. Okay.
yes,
Yet when they're practicing plays, whether it's football, whether it's basketball, whether it's hockey, but when the game comes, those plays never go exactly how is their practice, because there's an opposing team, there's weather conditions, what have you. But the structure that they put in place, that practicing within those framework, gives them the freedom and the flexibility to be able to innovate and to be able to adapt in the moment, because they're not thinking about these other things that have now become muscle memory, right?
yes. Yes. And so, yes, structure is very important. So without it, what happened with me was, and this happened when I got out of the military, and then it happened again in the retirement, was I went into, well, first, there's this liberation. Yeah, I can do whatever. And then after a little while, it was like this loss of purpose. And I felt like I was like vanishing. I got really depressed and everything. But the interesting thing about it is nobody knew, because people would say, "Oh, well, did your family, were they asking, were they concerned?" I said, "No, everybody, family and friends were like, oh, you did it. You won.
Right.
You did this great thing. I was supposed to be, I'm setting the example. What everyone was trying to do, I did. So they're like, oh, you're good." But I was thinking, no, I'm not good. But everybody had the perception that I was. And that kind of makes it even worse, because then you're trying to, well, you can't, it's hard to say, no, I need help, no, I'm in a lot of pain when everybody is celebrating you, saying that you won.
Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I've had these conversations with others. We're taught to celebrate, to look forward from the start of our working life. We're supposed to look for the time we get the gold watch and we can retire, right? That we go
Yes.
play golf, travel, whatever that you want. So the idea that you come out at the other side of it and say, I'm unfulfilled, I don't have purpose, I think most people are inclined to believe there's a problem with us, right? That this isn't, there's something wrong with us because we're told that this is what we should want. So your point and your honesty in coming forward and saying that this is something that you went through will resonate with most people because it's something that everybody goes through. And I've said this often. You can't spend 30 plus years working 40 plus hours a week at a job, whether you like it or not. That job, that career is your identity. It's your social network. It's your sense of purpose. It's what you do for a big chunk of your waking hours in that week. You can't suddenly assume that on a Friday evening you say goodbye to all of that. On Monday morning, you're going to wake up and say, hey, okay, here's the rest of my life. I think without the planning, without putting structure, without understanding how you're going to fill those 40 hours in your week that are suddenly free, the friends and network or social contacts that you had that you suddenly don't have, those deadlines and things that as much as we might have not liked it when we had it,
Yes.
that gave us a sense of direction and focus and prioritization and all of that, right?
Right. And there's also a lot of guilt too that comes with it because naturally, I no one wants to hear me complain like you retired at 49 and so I can't say no, I'm not happy. Something's wrong here. I need to be fixed because everyone's like, "No, you don't get to not be happy." And so there was a lot of guilt and I think that it's one of those things like I said on who do you talk to? Who are you supposed to talk to say no? There's a problem because everyone
No one can
looking at
relate.
you. Right? Yeah, it's very hard for other people to relate to it, but it's still there.
That's so poignant. And so let's move to a thing that you kind of hinted at, and I want to dig deeper into. So you describe hitting a wall after retirement, and you said this, and I love it, is feeling like you had currency that wasn't accepted anymore.
Yes,
That's such a vivid image. Can you walk us through what that period felt like? And when did you recognize that you needed to actively rebuild rather than just wait for purpose to come and find you?
I would say it was about, and this would be different for everybody, but I'd say about 8 months. 8 months after retirement was when all the vacation stuff, all of the golf lessons and everything. And finally, I stopped moving so fast, and I got to sit down, sit with it, and then say, "Well, what's happening?" And then this was when everyone was like, "What are you doing now? What's happening?" And I was getting the praise, but at the same time, the world was going on without me, and I was just. I felt I used to be somebody. I used to be important, and then I'm just walking around the store trying to see if something's on sale today. And now I'm just some regular guy. But I used to, well, at least I felt like I carried some weight and I was, since, my job title, I was this.
Right.
But now when people, hey, what are you doing? I'm retired, and then that's it. And then people
That's the end of
just
the
move on.
conversation then, right?
Yes. And so it was, it was just really, when I'd wake up in the morning, it's like I don't, you know, I'm still alive. I don't know what am I supposed to be doing because everybody else, especially when you retire early, if you retire later, then maybe there's a bunch of other people that are retired that and
Right.
you go, "What are you guys doing?" But when you're the first one in your group, everybody else is still going to work. Everyone else is still doing, and your family, they're still doing their thing. And then I needed to find something because I felt like I was just fading away, like I was a ghost. And the currency thing, like I had all this currency, and now it is no. it's of no use in this new life. So then I said, well, I need to get out of this slump. I need to do something. I need to find that new North Star. I need to find a new mission. And then that was when I was laying in bed one night, and I was like, if I only had like a reset button that I could hit and start this over. And that's how I came up with the idea of my program, the reset button. But it was because I had to rebuild myself from scratch.
Mm.
And then I said, well, I'll just document it. And this is kind of like when we mentioned earlier in the intro, my book, An Introvert's Guide to World Domination, is being an introverted, shy, and socially awkward person. I had to navigate my time in the military and in the business world. And, it was tough because I'd see a lot of more extroverted, outgoing people, and they'd have these opportunities, and I wanted to get access to those opportunities. And I said, well, how can I do that with my personality type?
Mm-hmm.
And then when I observed, because the superpower of introverts is observation, I would observe and say, okay, well, what can we do here? How can I break this down? Not that things that I could do, but that I would do. And I took a little bit from the military. In the military, they do procedures. And so the making of the bed and basic training, everyone's seen the movies, and they break it down into such simple steps that a genius or the opposite of a genius, everybody learns how to make the bed the same way.
Mm-hmm.
For the introvert networking thing, I broke it down into steps that I could follow to do it. And then so for this also, I said, well, if I need a new mission, if I need a new North Star and to rebuild my life, let me be the guinea pig and let me go through the steps to rebuild it. And then I will document that. And because I can't be the only one with this issue, and then I will help other people. And that's what I'm doing now, is helping other people who feel like they are lost or without purpose, or there's a major life transition where they say, I wish I had a reset button that I could hit this, and then we can start over and rebuild, reset.
Now, I think most listeners of this program would be hard pressed to see you as a retiree in the traditional sense, not what we picture. Can you talk about first your interpretation of retirement? And secondly, you talk about two distinct life phases, which intrigues me. Number one, the achievement phase, and number two, the relationship phase.
Yes.
I think you termed it the warrior on the plains versus the tribal elder in the tent. I like that imagery. How did you come to see this distinction? And I guess what makes this transition so disorienting for people who spent decades excelling in the achievement phase?
Excellent question. So first part of that on the retirement, for some reason, I had just pictured like boating. I just said, oh, when I retire, I'm just going to be on sailboats. Maybe I'll be on a yacht or something too, and I'll just be sailing all the time.
Right.
I live in Colorado. There's not a lot of sailing going on, but I initially moved to Mexico when I retired. But after you're sailing for a bit, you still, I didn't imagine it past that. I think I imagined my retirement for about 6 to 8 months, which is how long I lasted before I hit that wall. But you don't really picture it like, is this 40 years of this? So there was, I think we're all trained. So the phases, the achievement phase, where we're all pretty much trained to do, which is our identities wrapped around what we do and how well we do it. And then we shift into that phase. So the warrior on the plains versus the village elder, tribal elder in the tent. And nobody ever tells you about, okay, we're going to need you over here in the tent. And so when you put in all this time, let's say 30 years learning something, and whether you like it or not, you have a lot of knowledge. And then it becomes a time where instead of getting your identity through your achievements, you switch over to the relationships, like what you are and what you mean to your family, your community, your mentees, being a mentor and distributing that knowledge. So, and even, I guess you could say in the military, even like the generals or something, they'd be like, I can go out on the battlefield. Yes, you can, but we need you over here. Right. We need you planning because you have this wisdom from all your time in. And we're not saying that, sure, from time to time, if you need to go out there, yeah, go out, but then come back because we need you in this stage. So we're all trained for that achievement part, but we're not really trained for that, the relationship part, where now you kind of step back from identifying yourself as the warrior on the plain, and now you're more of the tribal elder where you help guide people. You make these relationships. You can be a mentor to somebody, and you can live more of it's a different style of how
Right.
you orient yourself to
Right.
the world.
I love that image. And it reminds me of the analogy that David Brooks, the journalist and author, uses in his book, The Second Mountain. He calls it Adam 1 versus Adam 2. So he says all of us have these Adam 1 values, which he calls the resume values. So this is your achievement phase that he talks about. The things that we would want written in our resume or in a reference letter or whatever. Sam is hardworking, Nick is very analytical, all of those kind of things. He says most of us will make that transition eventually to Adam 2 values, which is what he calls the eulogy values. Okay, so when we
Yes.
die and what we want people to say about us, it isn't that, oh, Nick was very good at doing a spreadsheet. That's not what we care about, right? We want
Right.
people to say that Nick was a kind-hearted guy. He was, a good friend. He was a good spouse, what have you.
Yes.
And as I'm thinking about this, I think it's something that we all can twig around. And I think it comes from the fact that many of us are quantitative in nature, especially a lot of the listeners, where many of us are type A, achievement oriented. And I think that, and I'd love your take on this, I think that the achievement phase, other than the fact that it's a big chunk of our life, it comes with clear metrics.
Yes.
Okay, like for whether we like it or not, whether it's the military, whether it's the business world, it's promotions, it's pay raises, it's completed projects, it's annual reviews. Now, you may disagree with all of that, but at least you know the playing field and the rules.
Right.
But this relationship phase or the eulogy values or the Adam 2 values that David Brooks talks about doesn't have the same measurable feedback. So we're stuck saying, okay, I was good here. Am I
Yes.
really good here? Or, am I adding value or am I just wasting time? Can
Right.
you expand on that challenge and what you think about that issue of metrics and perhaps how you might help people find their footing when that familiar scorecard that they've always been used to using disappears?
Right. Yeah, that's a big one too, because at least you have like a those that structure on the achievement side. You have something to base where you are to measure it, because you can say, okay, stimulus response, this equals
It's
this,
that,
this
right.
happens.
So
And
keep
so,
doing that or
right.
stop doing that, right?
Yes. And then when we move into the other phase, then yes, it's not as concrete. So it's a lot harder to, if you're trying to measure yourself that way. So I would say, instead of taking that mindset from the phase one, the achievement, and then bringing it over and then trying to find those same metrics, because you're not going to find them, so it's going to drive you crazy. So I think you have to do a complete shift in how you look
Hmm.
at your role, and you're you're going to be, sure, doing what you can, dispensing your knowledge and value. But I think that it's kind of one of those things where it's, people say, I'm living vicariously through you. It's one of those things where I think you can measure it by, if you're a mentor and you're dispensing some advice, if your mentees, if you give them advice and then they never come back to you again, then you can say, okay, maybe that's one of the metrics on this phase. But if they come back, they ask for more advice, or they're implementing your advice and they're succeeding. Like, I have a few mentees at the moment, and when I suggest something and then they do it, I'm like, okay, oh, they did it. Because sometimes they might say yes, okay, and then they won't do it. But if they do it, then I'm like, okay, we made some breakthrough, and then it works, and they come back and say, I tried that thing that you told me about, and it worked, and now they want more. Then I'm like, okay, so now this is now the new measuring stick. Their success is my success, so I'm getting my success, instead of just in the workplace. You run some tests or you have a conference and you have those measurements. Now when I am mentoring somebody and they're having success from something that I helped them with or advised them on, then I feel like I'm winning through that. Or it doesn't even have to just be like a mentor thing. There's a one of my new missions these days is when I get out of bed, I say, I'm going to make someone's day today. I'm going to make a miracle for somebody today because it just somehow it fills my cup too, helping somebody. And I don't know how it's going to be. Just when I wake up, I say, I'm going to make somebody's day today. I'm going to be the angel for somebody today. And I don't know what form it's going to take, but when I do it, then I feel somehow that I've shined a little light on them, and I win the day by making somebody's day. So it's these little things,
I
but it's
love
not
that.
as
I think you're
concrete.
absolutely right. I think we have to change the way we think about it. You don't have to change the world. You just have to make a difference, however small, however little that it's there. My wife always says to me that you can make a difference by letting somebody cut in front of you on the highway, right?
Yes.
You can make a difference by saying good morning or smiling at someone that has a scowl on their face, and she's absolutely right. But I think
Yes.
we're conditioned to believe that it has to have a much bigger impact than that, right? And I think that one of the sayings that has always resonated with me, although I'm still trying to figure out how to apply it, is that we need to learn to measure what we value instead of valuing what we can measure, right?
Yes. Yes.
And I think this is exactly what you're talking about, that there's a danger of falling back into that same thinking of the metrics that we use, because that's what we're used to doing. But we should learn to actually develop new scales and new metrics, and that's exactly what you're talking about, whether it's
Yes.
win the day that you wake up, or working through your mentees to kind of say, okay, is this something that they're implementing? And if they are, then your relationship, your advice, whatever, is having an impact in whatever shape or form that you've got.
Yes. Yeah. Problem solving is a big thing. I notice there's a lot of people that aren't good at problem solving. Uh, and so if you having the experience, the extra experience, if one of your mentees, or maybe it's just someone they don't have to be an official, you don't have to be their official mentor, but if you see something where you say, oh, because it might be easy for me to figure out something where somebody else, they say, hey, the printer isn't working. It could be something simple like that. And you say, oh, yeah, you just do this. And then, but it could be something really small like that, or it could be something big. But we have in that second phase, even in the first phase, you can look at things and you might have some more experience, and you might be able to help somebody else with some problem that seems very big for them, but for you, it's really nothing. And it helps keep your
Absolutely right.
mind
Right.
going.
You've given the benefit of experience. You start as an individual contributor, and then as you grow through your career, you're there to kind of mentor or help somebody that is a junior that is coming in. You might
Yes.
lead teams, and then to your point, it's sort of in a sense is a phase transition to this relationship phase in anyways, because
Yes.
your success is no longer about you yourself. It's about how you're able to empower others to be successful, right?
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
Nick, your reset framework applies beyond retirement. So, to people going through divorce, as you mentioned, job loss, or major career shifts. Can you share an example of how someone that you've helped has applied this framework in a different life transition when everything they knew about themselves suddenly changed?
Yes, yeah. Recently, very recently, there was a young man who just went through a horrible divorce, and so yeah, so it doesn't always have to be about retirement. It's just any major life transition. But he went through a divorce, and a lot of divorces aren't pleasant, and so this one was not pleasant. But he said, "Yeah, I have to restart my life." He went from this magnificent giant house with all these toys and things, and then to a studio apartment, and he was used to tucking his kids in every night, and but then it was just seeing them on the weekends. So it's this huge life change. But the systems, I'm a systems guy, and I think you are too, to put the system in place. The systems that we put in place, it has to be different than what he was used to. He was used to, once again, the identity was this, and now he didn't know. He's, what do I do? I don't know. My whole life just like a switch was flipped and it's different. So the steps are still the same and we can go through some of those. So first thing is just an audit. And so we do an self-audit. So not, I know audit can have some bad connotations. Feel like, I don't want to be audited. Yes, I understand, but this is a positive audit because, it's just this self-audit to see the baseline. Where are you at? What are the things that you still have? And then what are the things that need to be released? And just let's see what assets and liabilities, not just financial wise, but just everything. Do a full self audit just to see what we're working with. And then from there, because it's hard to change or dial it in and create this next phase, whatever that's going to be, if we don't know where we're at. So we always start off with the audit, and then we honor and kill the old story, and then we rebuild. And I think in another conversation I talked to you about this on, like, if somebody was writing a script for a movie, or if somebody, there's those role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons, people create characters. So if you're writing a movie, so why not? Back on the phase thing, I felt like that first phase of life for me, I felt like I was given that. And then now in this phase, I said, well, that's gone. And now let me create. I was given that one, but I can build and create one that I want now. And so the same with this young man that I was helping that went through the divorce. Now that one, that's gone, that life. So instead of, there was a YouTube video where somebody said, in another life, maybe I can do this. Well, your other life starts now. And so we don't have to just do anything drastic. We can figuratively, in that one, honor it, let it go. Then we rebuild. We take the parts of it that we still have that we want to carry forward. And then we add in, okay, who am I going to be? What would I like this chapter to be? And yes, it's still, I'm not saying that the divorce isn't painful, or even like the early retirement where you hit the wall isn't painful, but we have to shine some light on it and then decide, okay, well, what are we going to do now? And we put together, we rebuild the core, and then we get our environment. We curate our environment to match that, and then our mind, our presence, and then we'll start, like, this person, now their social circle, his social circle was kind of built around his marriage.
Right.
And so all those friends, we have to say, okay, well, who went, on that side, and then who's still over here. But then he can, with this new him, we have to we can't just let him mope in his studio apartment. We have to get him out. So now, and I don't know how deep you want me to get into this.
Yeah, go further. I mean, you're building his new life. You're helping him build that new identity, right?
Yes. And so after we kind of plug in these parts so when we're rebuilding him, and we say, okay, I would like to be more like this. So this new me, are they a morning person? Are they a night person? Okay. What's their morning routine like? What do they eat? What would you like to do? Because, you can say, well, this is what I do. Okay. No, that's not you anymore. If you could just choose, is there like a role model that you have, then you could just take some of their behaviors, write it all down, and figure out, okay, what are we going to be like? What's this new me? And then we introduce you back into the world with this new you. So, and these are adjustable for the person, but the defaults, I say, are a cooking class, a dance class, and a language class. And so then that gets you back out into the community, and it's kind of intimate because, the cooking class, you're working with someone to create this meal, and the dance class, it's, you're touching somebody and you're talking to them, you're communicating. And then the language class, you're completely butchering some language with a group of people. And so you're bonding. When you're talking with them and you're introducing yourself as this new identity. So now all these new people know you not as, so if you were in your marriage and your identity was that, now they don't know that you, they know this you that you're coming to the table with. Or if, like in my case with the retirement, instead of me introducing myself as my job title from before,
Right.
now I'm introducing myself in a totally different way. So where the new me is out there and getting reinforced by this new social situation.
These interactions you've got. No, let me unpack everything that you've said because I think it's fascinating. I mean, you're obviously clearly talking about tapping into that authentic part of your personality. You're not creating a false persona that you're going out there. We all have multitudes within us. And as you say, the parts of your personality that you emphasized in your earlier life might not be the ones that you want to focus on your later life. But there's a lot that is being written that's been talked about that, like, look, at the end of the day, our life is really a story that we concoct and create. There are various events, there are various experiences, there are various data points. And it's us that are connecting those data points and those experiences to tell a coherent story, right?
Yes.
And so this idea of identity, I think, has got a huge amount of currency right now in behavioral research and behavioral science, and it's tapped into in all sorts of places. So, for example, if you go into a hotel, you'll see in the bathroom, there's always the towels, and then there's a little card that says that you do your part for the environment, but if you don't need your towels washed, it's leave them hanging. And
Yes.
most of the hotel chains now add something along the lines of 80 to 90% of people that have stayed in this room reuse their towels. So why are they doing that? It's behavioral research. They're tapping into this person's identity as being a responsible citizen like everybody else that stayed in that room.
Yes.
I think we see this in, for example, like in financial advisory, a world that I'm very familiar with is that, look, part of it is that clients come in and they panic. And I mean, it's not easy to do, but what an advisor can do is tap into their sense of identity. Are you a responsible investor? Like, what would Warren Buffett do in this circumstance? And the idea is there is a facet of their personality, of their identity that wants to be like Warren Buffett. And it triggers them to sit there and reevaluate their behavior with that framing of what Warren Buffett would do, and then reevaluate their own behavior or their own reaction as to whether that's appropriate or not. And this framework that you're talking to me makes total sense. You do have to do this audit to see where you're at. You have to think about rebuilding what that looks like in the new you that you want to be. And then you're talking about reintegrating that back into an environment where you're forced to forced, but you are also, this is an environment where people don't know you, so you can test out that new identity without feeling like somebody's going to call you an imposter, right?
Right. Yes. And it reinforces the new identity also.
Yeah, 100%. So, and you've talked about when we spoken earlier that this old identity often tries to creep back in, especially when
Yes.
we're feeling vulnerable or things aren't going as planned. I'm sure you've had this from your working days to your retirement. There's almost a temptation to want to go back to work or something like that, not necessarily for just financial, but because the structure was there, the metrics were there.
Yes.
What are the warning signs that someone is slipping back into who they used to be? And how do you use things like accountability to help them stay committed to this new chapter of their lives?
Right. It's very slippery because it will always try to creep back in. And so you have to be watching to watch your behaviors and see when it's coming, because it will show up at some point. And so there's certain things, having an accountability buddy to help review, and even I have one, so every Wednesday it's like, okay, what's going on, what do you do, and trying to identify where you might have slipped during the week so you can bring everything back in line. And then also there's some things like, I gave a TEDx talk on the power of uniforms. So and it kind of goes like, police officers have a uniform, firefighters have a uniform, chefs have their uniform, and so when they put on the uniform, they are that.
Mm-hmm.
My best friend is a police officer, and when he puts on his uniform, whether he wants it or not. You're a police officer now. You have the uniform on, so he has to behave that way. And so I suggested in my TEDx talk that people, you can have something, so it could be like a bracelet, it can be a necklace, it can just be something that only you know about, but then that's your uniform. So for this new you, now they have this thing. So then you can, if it's a necklace, you can kind of touch it and be like, oh yes, this is me. This isn't the old me. This is the new me because I have the, the necklace on. And so you can choose something to act. It could be a belt. It could just be something that, earrings or something that only you know about, but it kind of reminds you that,
Touchstone.
yes,
Touchstone. That's
yes.
great. That's a great idea. Now, Nick, many professionals, including those listening to this episode, focus on helping clients achieve concrete goals, whether it's clients, team members, colleagues, etc. So that could be financial security, it could be business growth, it could be career advancement. But what we've talked about is the fact, a very important fact, that emotional and psychological transition can be just as critical. So
Yes.
how can those working with others, as I said, whether it's advisors working with clients, leaders working with their teammates, etc., how can these people who help people who are in transition better prepare them for the deeper identity questions that emerge when, as you so clearly showed, the path forward isn't always obvious?
I would say for the advisors to kind of keep their eyes open, their mind open on when they're talking to the clients, to because most of the conversations mostly are about the finances, but to also remind the clients that, make sure that you also have, that it's not just that there's going to be challenges as well. When they're planning, it's not just financial planning, but planning for,
Lifestyle and
yes,
everything else, right?
what does that look like? Because I think that the more preparation you can put into, so all of this preparation, or most of it, people think about just, hey, what can we do to get my finances in order? But if they can also think about, well, exactly do you think it's going to look like? Because yes, it's going to be different than what you're thinking, but what is your plan? What is your plan for, like, your day? What would an average day look like? And then have them write that down, and then let's say, okay, does it still look like that 6 months after that? And what if it doesn't? What are the other contingencies? Because people need to actually think about, everyone's living a lot longer these days. So no matter when you retire, even if you retire at 70 years old, you still might have another 30 years in you. So what is that going to look like? And so I'd say for people to plan that, but also I think a really good thing, once again, do that personal audit. But I would say everybody, pretty much everybody, when they were achieving and building their careers, they sacrificed something along the way. They sacrificed something that they used to love and enjoy doing, and that falls by the wayside. And a lot of times you don't even think to look back. But I would say a good exercise to encourage clients to do is try to think of some of those sacrifices that you made, that you used to love. And it could have been sacrificing, for your family, for your job, but there's some kind of thing. Like, I used to write poetry all the time when I was a teenager, and then I'd say once I turned maybe 17, I don't know if I've written a poem since then.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the things I say, wow, I used to love that. Maybe let me revisit that and see if it still has something there, because maybe I revisit it and nothing, but maybe I go, oh yes, there's something there. Maybe some writing stories. There's something that I think everybody has, something that they can look back on, and that they gave up, that maybe they'd like to revisit just to see. And they're probably going to find something that can light a little fire in them and say, yes, I remember this. I forgot this brings me back to a simpler time, and that they can enjoy. But I think that's another thing that
That's great.
your listeners can
That's great advice.
ask clients.
Now, Nick, we're coming to the end of our podcast, so I have a few final rapid fire questions for you that I ask all
Okay.
my guests. So, number one, Professionally, what is the most important lesson you've learned over the years?
Ooh. Well, I guess for me, it's systems. I like systems. So I would say the most important lesson for me to be able to function is to either apply one of the systems that I've already developed or develop a system for whatever it is that I'm facing. And then with that structure, the structure of the system, then it's a lot easier for me to tackle it. So, and that might not be for everybody, but for me, I would say to either implement a system or make a system to apply to
No, look,
the
I think that's
situation.
great advice. And I would say that I would suspect that for most people, they need some element of that for some parts of their life. Different people might need it for all elements of their life or all parts of their life. But I think all of us, whether we know it or not, we're using some sort of system or structure. It could be the morning getting up process from a routine that you've built in that you're going to do it. It could be your gym process. It's a process or a system or a structure doesn't have to be very formal or doesn't have to be in a computer program or something like that or in a spreadsheet, but it is something that you follow in a systematic way, right?
Yes, guidelines
Some
so you know where you're
guidelines
at.
so that you're not always thinking in the moment. I think like we all kind of, if you think about it, it's automatic. There's research that says that we make about, I don't remember the number exactly, but something in the order of 70,000 decisions per day.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
And obviously, we're not thinking about all of those. Most of those are automatic and they're systems from the way that we enter our car to the way that we go enter our bed. I mean, we're not rethinking each time that we go in to say, okay, how am I going to go get into bed to go to sleep today?
Right.
There's a system, right? There's a
Yes.
structure, there's a process. It just becomes routine and a habit.
Yes.
Nick, number two, what is one practical tip you would offer listeners keen on applying your insights?
Start with that audit. Start with the audit. Whether you think you need it or not, do it. Do the audit just so you can kind of see where you're at. It doesn't hurt. It seems like a lot of work, but it's not. It's actually can be fun to just yes, the pleasurable audit we can call it. So it's not the bad audit. If you have to do an audit, you want to do this audit and not
Yeah, no kidding.
the
No
other
kidding,
audit.
right? The consequences are better than the other one.
Yes.
Nick, this is a great discussion. If listeners want to learn more about you or find out about your work, where do they go?
They can go to resettheman.com, resettheman.com, and women can come too. I just needed a catchy domain name. But yes, resettheman.com, and they can also find me on LinkedIn. I can help if somebody needs some help. You don't need me to help you, but if you would like it, I can help you. And it's not a member of my team, it's me. You're getting me. So yes, I'd be honored.
That's awesome. Nick, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
You're listening to The Uncertainty Edge, the show. In this episode of the Uncertainty Edge podcast, I spoke with Nick Shelton, author of An Introvert's Guide to World Domination, about navigating life's most challenging transitions. In his case, from military service to early retirement at age 49. Here are my three key takeaways. Number one, the currency that no longer spends. Nick described retirement as having currency that wasn't accepted anymore. After decades building identity around achievements and measurable success, he hit a wall 8 months in. Not financially, but existentially. The lesson? Readiness isn't just about money. It's about auditing your sense of purpose, your daily structure, and what will fill those hours when the familiar scorecard disappears. The guilt Nick felt, I won, so why am I unhappy, is more common than people admit, whether facing retirement, career shifts, or major life changes. Number two, warrior to elder, redefining success. Nick distinguishes between the achievement phase, identity wrapped around what we do, and the relationship phase, meaning derived from mentoring, relationships, and impact on others. Nobody prepares us for the shift. Success becomes less about hitting targets and more about making someone's day, guiding others,
or reclaiming passions you sacrificed. This transition requires consciously redefining what winning looks like in your next chapter. Number 3, design your reset. Nick's framework is simple. Audit where you are, rebuild who you want to be, then reintroduce yourself to the world. His prescription of cooking, dance, and language classes isn't random. It's about testing your new identity in environments where nobody knows the old you. The insight? You don't wait for purpose to find you. You architect it, test it, and adjust it with accountability and tangible reminders to keep you anchored when old patterns try to creep back. Nick reminds us that the best transitions aren't accidental, they're designed. When life demands we reimagine ourselves, the leaders who thrive are those who ask not just, am I ready, but who am I becoming?
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Uncertainty Edge. If today's conversation sparked something, subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. You'll get practical tools, deeper insights, and new episodes every other Tuesday. Please leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also subscribe to the newsletter at theuncertaintyedge.com.